So servant leadership is something that I love. It's something that I'm passionate about. It is my leadership theory. It is, if you ask me, Greg, what is your leadership style, mindset? Of course, I can give you the style. I'm very democratic, but really, if you had to look at what makes me who I am as a leader, it's servant leadership. And the mindset that I, as a leader, should make servitude to serve others my goal. So for those of you that know me, my name is Greg Brightbill. I work here at the University of Maryland, Baltimore as an Associate Director for Student Leadership and Involvement and Intercultural Leadership and Engagement. And today we're going to be talking about servant leadership. Now, for those of you that are Zooming in, of course, feel free to use the chat. I'm going to try to respond as I can to be able to engage with you and your points, and I'm going to ask some questions. But overall, I want you just to listen, and I want you to start thinking about servant leadership and the core principles of servant leadership and how you can be a servant leader yourself. And so I'm going to fix this so I can share my sound and my screen. So the first thing that I want to know is, what do you think about when you hear the term servant leadership? So when you hear the word servant leadership, what comes to your mind? What do you think about? Yeah, I see a leader who tries to serve the needs of others before their own, along with people's values. I think of a humble leader, of a leader that thinks of other people before they think of themselves. I think of a giving leader. You know, when I think of some leaders, I think, very much take, of take as much as I can, of absorbing as much money as I can, as much power as I can, as much influence as I can. And when I think of servant leadership, I think of the exact opposite of all of those things. Yes, Marcella, a leader who is more about empowering others and getting their own agenda across. Yeah. So servant leadership, in many ways, runs counter to what most organizations and people think of leadership. Don't get me wrong, we love the concept of servant leadership. We love that. We think it's great. We think, oh my gosh, it's the best thing. But really, when you look at how most organizations function, we love servant leadership in concept, but we do not want to give up power and money and resources and influence. And while we love the concept of servant leadership, like that is just beautiful, put that on a bumper sticker, I'll put it on my car, but really at the end of the day, most organizations reject servant leadership. Why? Why do you think? What do you think? Why are we uncomfortable with actually being servant leaders or developing organizations that serve, that reject traditional concepts of power and influence and richness and wealth? Yeah, often it's viewed as weak. A leader who is a servant leader may be viewed as weak. To many people, yes, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense that why would you work hard to not have anything, to give up everything? Greg, why are you working hard to get a promotion only to turn around and start delegating your tasks and responsibilities to somebody else? Now, I'm going to play a quick video, and I want you to think about servant leadership. And this is the individual, his name is Ken Blanchard, and he's actually is very much a preeminent person in servant leadership, but he's not the creator of it. We're going to talk a little bit more later on about Robert Greenleaf, who is, the not the creator of servant leadership, but the one that brought it into the modern era of leadership theory.
Reason why a lot of people have some negative thoughts about the term servant leadership is they don't understand that there are two parts of servant leadership, two aspects of it. One is vision and direction. That's the leadership part of servant leadership. Because leadership's about going somewheres. And if your people don't know where you're going and what you want to accomplish, what's the chances of them ever getting it done? Zipola, And so that's the leadership part of servant leadership. And that I got really interested in that whole vision and direction part, because there's really four parts of a compelling vision. I wrote a book called Full Steam Ahead with a gal who'd been studying vision for years. But the four parts are, one is, what business are you in? Why are you even doing what you're doing? Okay. Second is, if you do a good job in your business, what will happen? Where are you going? The third is, what's going to guide your journey? What are your values? So a compelling vision tells you who you are, what business you're in, where you're going, which is your picture of the future, and then third, what will guide your journey, your values. And then once that's set, then the fourth one kicks in, which is the first secret of the one-minute manager, is what? Goals. Because goals tell people what do you want you to focus on right now. But it's so interesting is that if you have a compelling vision that tells you who you are, where you're going, what's going to guide your journey, then goals have a meaning in relation to that. Without a compelling vision first of those three characteristics, goals are often seen as a threat. If we don't accomplish this, and all this kind of thing, and people grunting and groaning and all, because they don't know how it kind of fits in together with it all.
So even thinking about servant leadership, often, when we look at it, actually there's so much value in the servant leadership mindset of understanding a leader's role. And just like what Ken Blanchard said is when we look at it, for example, vision. As a leadership quality, vision is extremely important because a leader is the one that is sharing their vision of where we will go. And if you're a leader, it's not just about you going in that direction, but you sharing your vision, of sharing the reason you want to get there, of influencing other people to go with you. And you have to get them to buy in. And the great thing about servant leadership is that getting people to buy in, you give value to them. It's not about you as the leader. If you think about leadership and some of the ones that we've talked about before, servant leadership really lays upon a key component of you have to make people's lives better, and that's your motivation to get them to come with you. So let's talk. Let's think about this. So as I mentioned before, Robert Greenleaf is the one that and I wish I could have found a video of him. I was watching it beforehand. Unfortunately, the video that I used to have got pulled. But Robert Greenleaf, he passed away a long time ago. He wrote an article called "The Servant Leader," the servant as a leader, and he wrote it in 1970. And Robert Greenleaf, he said very frankly, he's like, listen, servant leadership is not new. The servant as the leader, we can see throughout history. We see it in religious texts. We see it in some great leaders of history. I mean, if you think about it, servant leadership is something that has always been admired. It's that mentality of you giving up everything for other people and people following you for that. You know, think of the work that Gandhi did. Think of the work that Martin Luther King Jr. did, where often their main goal was to serve people, and people were gravitated to that. People see that, and they will follow you. Now I want to ask you, so based on, you know, when you're thinking about servant leaders, somebody who is a leader, but that doesn't follow traditional norms of leadership, therefore rejecting power, rejecting influence. You know, it's like you say to me, Greg, I'm going to follow you anywhere because you're my leader. And my response is, no, I don't want you to follow me anywhere because I'm the leader. Where do you want to go? How, as a leader, how can I get you there? It's like if I'm driving the car and you all are sitting in the car with me. Yes, I am the one driving the car. I'm the one steering the steering wheel. But at the end, it's not me that gets to choose where we go. A good leader, a good driver says, where can I take you? Where can we go together? Where do you all want to go? Do you know a better road? I was thinking about going this way, but you have a great idea. You know what? What if we stop the car and then I'm going to get out and I want you to drive for a little bit? So that's servant leadership. But to do that, then I'm giving up the power that was given to me of being the driver. And in traditional management, it's like, wait, what? So you just made yourself unnecessary? You just fired yourself. Why would you do that? Now they're going to take you somewhere you don't want to go. Greg, why'd you give them the keys in the car and the steering wheel? Now I want to ask you all, what leaders come to your mind? What servant leaders do you think follow this mantra, this view? Who do you think is a great servant leader? And I want you to say why. Feel free to show your video and unmute yourself if you'd like. Think of a servant leader. Candace?
Hey, how are you?
Wonderful. Tell me more about the person you're thinking of.
Yeah, there was someone that is now a friend of mine, but we began working together at my last job. And I know she's not like a really famous person, but I really appreciate her. She was the head of DEI at the company. And I think that she did a really awesome job of leading conversations that were really tricky, right, around identity and the mission of the company. And you know, taking a back seat when it was necessary in order to essentially get us through to the end of the mission, right? Whether it be a difficult conversation, creating new objectives for an initiative. And I think that a lot of people really respected her because she took that servant leadership stance. And she just so happened to be someone who also led college students on trips for service learning, right? So not only did she, you know, she really practiced what she preached, she really embodied it. And I thought it was a great model for those of us who were looking to kind of follow behind her.
Yeah, and that's so true. And the thing is, while sometimes we're uncomfortable of really actually living servant leadership, people follow servant leaders. They do because we are gravitated to them because you feel it. You feel what it's like to be a part of that structure of a servant leader, of a follower of a servant leader. And it's intoxicating. It's like you're around that person, you're like, what are you doing? You're listening to me. You're rejecting your influence instead of when somebody says, what does the leader say? The leader says, well, what do the people say? And then we're like, what? And it can be a little off-putting, but when it happens, it's amazing. And it sounds like yours is just that. And you don't have to be a famous person to be a servant leader. There's servant leaders everywhere. So thank you so much, Candace. Thank you. I'm going to also pull from the chat. Mother Teresa, yes, especially the work that she did, giving up a lot of her livelihood. I mean, living a life where she didn't have a lot of things, but also really helping people that were sick. Gandhi, very famous. He really did care about his community and building a community and building a free India, bringing about peace. President Carter engaging in improving status of the poor. Yeah, after his presidency, he's still, I think he's like, oh gosh, 98, 99. I mean, he's close to it, but he's still out there serving people. In fact, many politicians, I would like to say, should be servant leaders. Many are not. But even when we view of what a good politician, they're a servant leader. And so now I want you to think about, so servant leadership, how does it play out? Because we're starting to see what a servant leader is. But how does it play out in an organization? Now, the traditional leadership model, think of it like a pyramid. You have the leader at the top, and below the leader, you have management, and below the management, you have employees, and below employees, you have customers, clients. In academia, we have students. Now, in traditional leadership, power starts at the leader. Think of it like water trickling downhill. Now, if you have a leader, power, like water, starts from them. The well is at the top, and it trickles down. And so let's say if the leader is giving out influence, because the leader does, that is what a leader does. They say, you are my management. You are the one that takes my wishes and you make it happen. You do as I say. And management. So let's say 100% of power comes from the leader. But then you have 4 managers in the middle. And so each of those, well, let's say 5 managers, so I can do the math easily. So each manager gets 20% of the power. Okay, so then you also now have to worry about, am I getting enough power? I only have 20% of the power, 20% of the influence. I'm one of 5 managers. And then you have employees. And if each manager has 4 employees, then what? Each employee has like 5% of power. And then broken down further, you can see it fragments even more. And the problem that we have with this is that by the time it gets to the many people, the customers, the stakeholders, the clients, the customers, the students, there's nothing to hand out. There's no power. There's no influence. And this fragmentation just keeps getting more and more the more people you have. And you see this as an issue because change has to start from the top. Change only can come from the leader. So I think back to one of my first jobs when I was a kid, and pretty much throughout college, was that I worked at grocery stores. I worked at a Safeway, and then I worked at a Giant. And I was a cashier, bottom of the food chain. And often it was very interesting because customers would come to me with ideas. And I would maybe occasionally have ideas. Do you think we did anything with those ideas? Do you think we actually told the CEO, hey, I have an idea, or hey, a customer had an idea? Has anybody ever been in that type of situation where you know that you're the bottom of the food chain in this organizational structure, and no matter what you do, in the end, your opinion, your say, doesn't matter to the organization? Yeah, Candace, you're right. It's very frustrating. It's very disheartening. And that's just because that's the function. Yeah, Anna said that pretty much every job. That's the function of traditional leadership, because in the end, the decisions are made by the leader. Power emanates from the leader. And so by the time it gets down to the many, there's not much there. There's maybe a drop of power. Now here's where servant leadership takes this pyramid and it turns it upside down. Power starts from the many. and it goes through. And the role of each person in the organizational structure is to serve. So this power comes from the employees, power comes from the customers, the clients, the students. And then the employees, they're getting it. And because power is flowing through them, they're getting more, so they don't have to fight over it. Because they're giving power, they're putting it down to management. And management is giving it to the leader. And the leader's job in this, because power is collecting at them, is to throw it back up. It's rejecting of that power. So the way you see this coming into fruition in an organization is, let's say, for example, if I'm a manager and you're an employee, and you come to me with an idea, and I then support you, and because we value the input of employees and of customers, we carry that forward. There is never a feeling of I don't matter, because in this type of organization, we've seen it matter. Leadership has made it feel like it's happening, where customers matter, customer service matters, employee satisfaction matters. And then we see this in the way you lead. So the way in traditional management styles, you're holding on to dear life with your management because you only get so much power, so much influence, and it's more competitive, and you're fighting. There's 4 people and as managers and 1 leader, and let's say the leader's retiring, we are going to fight like none other. And then when one of us gets that spot, it's like a victory tour because the other 3 didn't get it. And so you're seeing this a little bit more toxicity. Whereas in servant leadership, each of our roles is to grow together. And so if I'm a manager and you're an employee, I'm consistently saying, not only what do you want, what do you think, what direction do you have, but how can I get you there? How can I build you up? But also, how can I give you some of my responsibilities? Hey, I'm in charge of, let's say we're at the grocery store. I'm still working at, hey, Greg, or I'm Greg. Hey, person, I know you're just a cashier, but I want to give you more responsibilities because I want to build you up as a person. Can you build the schedule for this week? That's going to be something I want your responsibility. Now, traditional leadership says, whoa, Greg, that's your job. Like, if you keep giving away your job, you're going to lose your job. But in servant leadership, I'm doing it where I'm giving my response. I'm giving power to people, the employees. At the same time, my supervisor is giving me power. And together, we are all growing. We are all becoming better. The organization is improving. And so that's where servant leadership gets radical, is because in servant leadership, we don't hold on to power. We view it as fluid. We don't hold on to authority. So now, Larry C. Spears is another influential individual within servant leadership. And he said, here's 10, and it's a lot, but 10 most important characteristics of servant leadership. First, a servant leader has to listen. In traditional leadership, it's not as important about listening, but yelling. In traditional leadership, you're standing there at the peak of your mountain, at the top of your pyramid, and you're yelling down. And you have to be loud, because if you're not loud, no one will hear you. But in servant leadership, it's about listening. And if you're yelling, you can't hear when you're yelling. Because when you're listening, you're making a deep connection with people. You're hearing what they're saying. You're hearing what they're feeling. And through that, you're being empathetic. To be a servant is to understand what people are experiencing so that you can serve them. And that's important, and empathy is a key component of that. If I'm the CEO of a corporation and I'm a servant leader, I need to understand, how are my employees feeling? And putting myself in those shoes. It's like the TV show that used to be on, what was it, CEO in Disguise, CEO Undercover, Boss Undercover. It's a cute show, but really what I hope it gave that person was empathy. Undercover Boss, thank you, Marcella. The next thing is healing. As a leader, you need to make sure people are whole. You're making sure that people are happy, are engaged and supported. You know, think about how a leader can make a positive difference in somebody's life, but also think about leaders that make a negative difference in somebody's life. Self-awareness. Part of being a servant leader is the humanity of leadership. You know, there's one of the leadership theories that I don't really care for. I don't like it. I don't like the name of it. I don't like the concept of it, which is called great man theory. So many reasons I don't like it. But great man theory says that a leader is almost a godlike figure, that they are a king or a queen, that were put on this earth to lead. They are perfect in every way. Servant leadership says absolutely not. We need to realize that if you're a servant leader, you know your strengths, your weaknesses, your values, how they impact those around you. Because if you're a servant leader, let's say, for example, you're the leader and you want to be a servant leader and you know you're not good at something, that's great, because then you can work with people and pull them in and allow their strength to complement your weaknesses. Next, a servant leader is persuasive. In research, time and time again, the key thing about being a leader is influence and persuasion. And a servant leader uses this vision. Now, don't get me wrong, a servant leader is still a leader. And that shared vision persuades people, encourages people to join in. You know, when the great leaders of the civil rights movement were bringing people on board, they had to persuade people, share their vision of an America that wasn't racist. I don't think we are there yet, but so we still have leaders that are doing that, persuading Americans to say, we are not there yet, but here's my vision of what I want us to be. And through that, people join in. And this is called conceptualization. And this is where a leader gives that mission, that vision. You know, it's like, going back to my car example, if I'm driving the car and we're going on vacation and we're going to Ocean City, let's say. My vision, hopefully, as the driver is going to be, we're going to get to Ocean City. We're going to drive this car, which would be your mission, to Ocean City, and we're going to get to Ocean City. That's your vision. And through this, people will give you you're going to get long-term motivation. You're going to get clarity. People are going to understand where you're going, but also people are going to be able to understand how they can assist in that. And then you have foresight, which is using tools and resources to plan for that future. A leader, a servant leader, has to be able to see what's coming, being aware. And a servant leader does that by listening. Next, stewardship. This is where a servant leader leads by example, taking responsibility, ethics. A good leader is somebody it's that transformational leader that we talked about, inspirational leader too. People want to follow you because they admire you, because they believe in you. And next, commitment to growth. So in an organization, a leader has to be committed to the people below them, or not below them because we're not following that structure, the people they serve, to help them grow. And so this is that, that building up people. You're not focused on your own growth because you're focused on other people growing. And hopefully you have a leader above you who's focused on you growing. And so the cycle continues and everybody gets something out of it and everybody grows. And then the final thing is a servant leader recognizes that they are not the most important thing of the equation. They're not the focus of it. A servant leader doesn't stand there saying, hey, everybody, I'm talking. Or hey, all eyes on me. A servant leader instead says, I want you all to talk to each other, build a community. I am but one puzzle piece of a larger picture. So based on this, so what do you all think? So based on what you've heard, what is the ultimate goal of a servant leader? What is the ultimate goal? To support people, to empower people, to heal, to help people grow. To see the ultimate goal? Yeah, the ultimate goal as pulling the expertise in the room to bring everyone together to achieving that goal, setting other people up for success, to collaborate to reach a shared goal. So are you starting to see some of the differences between traditional leadership and servant leadership? So I want to ask you, let's be critical. And I want to say, and I'm going to give an example that's the low-hanging fruit in this, is that I'm not saying these people that I'm going to give examples of are not good leaders, but I will say they are not good servant leaders. Jeff Bezos. Jeff Bezos is a phenomenal leader. Jeff Bezos has transformed the way we shop, the way we use technology. It has transformed so many things in our world. But do you think he's a servant leader? What do you think? Why? Why do you think Jeff Bezos is not a servant leader? Or do you think he is a servant leader? Now, of course, this is all a matter of opinion, so feel free to share your opinion. Well, Marcel, I don't know him either, so you and I are on the same page. Unfortunately, I wasn't invited to the Christmas party. Think about, though, his people. Think about the people that work for him. Yeah. And this doesn't mean that he's not a fantastic leader. It's not saying that he doesn't have great leaders amongst him. It's saying, we're looking at servant leaders. So let's talk about employees. Do you think employees if you've known anybody that's worked, for example, in the warehouses, do you think they feel like they have a say? Do you think that they feel like they have an impact? When you have a package delivered by an Amazon shipper, do you think that they feel a part of something greater themselves? Do you think they feel empowered? So I want you to give me some examples, though. And this used to be a small group activity, but we're going to just kind of skip through. And instead, I want us to be a larger discussion. So I want you to think about, and we're going to do this as a group, what are some organizations or people that exemplify servant leadership? And let's talk about what makes them good. I'm going to pause this, please. So when you're thinking of organizations and thinking of servant leadership, that's how we start seeing this small mindset just start spreading throughout an organization. And you start seeing it come into so many different aspects of how leadership interacts with customers, because in a servant leadership organization, the leader listens to the customers. For example, Netflix. just raised their rate again, and they were all over the news because people are like, why are you doing that again? Like, why do you keep raising the rate? Like, people are, do you think they're listening? I don't know. When Amazon Prime, you know, we all have our yearly tithing to Amazon Prime. I have my tithing every year. I think it's like $100 and something, and I give them my $100 and something, and in return they give me my free shipping and other stuff. And they raise the rate? Do you think they're going to listen to people? There's a story about Costco that one of the leaders of Costco as an organization said, hey, you know what? These hot dogs that we're giving out and pizza and French fries and this little food court, we're not really making a good profit on it. We should raise the price. And by raising the price like 10 cents, we can make so much money. And the leader of Costco was pretty much said, over my dead body, I am not raising that, because people love that. People love the fact that they can go to Costco and buy everything they need, and at the end of the day, they get like $1 hot dog. And people love that. And they told us they love that. And a leader in a servant leadership mindset takes and they listen, because if they weren't listening to what people were saying, they wouldn't know that. If they weren't listening, they'd be like, oh my God, that's a great idea. Let's make profit. Let's make money. And the thing is, even when we're thinking of organizations, the truth is organizations, companies, even if they are a servant leadership organization, that's okay. They're supposed to make profit. If you're not a company, if you're not growing, you're dying. And that's a business term. So this is actually based on John Elkington's book. And it's about servant leadership and how you can apply a servant leadership view on organizations to evaluate organizations. And it comes down to three major things: the people, the planet, and profit. And so when we look at an organization, people matter. They're the most important thing. And we're talking about, how does the organization take into consideration the customers, their needs, employees, but also supply chain. Apple has gotten in trouble with this several times, where they're like, oh, but our customers love us and our employees love us, but we're using slave labor to make some of the products, or some of the components of our products. And so people matter. And so if we're going to evaluate a corporation, we have to say, okay, well, how are you helping people? The diamond companies have gotten in trouble with this so many times. Same thing, literally using modern slavery and child labor. And so a servant leader says, my goal is to help people no matter what, wherever they are connected into my business structure. The next thing is planet. An organization should look at how they, as an organization, impact the globe, the environment. And so when we're thinking about a servant leadership organization, what is their role? Because by harming the planet, they're harming people. So how are they eliminating an ecological footprint? How are they eliminating that harm? I believe it was Pandora, the jewelry company. They recently said that we are not using any real diamonds anymore. We are going to use human-made diamonds, because their logic was natural diamonds, first off, are almost indistinguishable against human-made, but natural diamonds cause a huge ecological footprint. The amount of mining we have to do, the carbon footprint that we produce per diamond is just astronomical. And they also think of the people, which is, we are worried about our supply chains of where we get diamonds. So right there, you're seeing planet and people. And then profit. Every organization has to think of profit. Every business has to think of profit. I may be unpopular in this. I am an academic. I am a higher education professional. I've worked in higher education my entire career, and this is all I ever want to do. And nonprofit too. I've always been nonprofit, higher education. And at the end of the day, profit matters, whether we like to say it or not. Sometimes it's dirty to talk about profit and to say, oh, we really need profit and revenue, especially if you're a nonprofit. But it does matter, because if you are not making a profit, you are actually possibly harming people. You're harming your employees. And so in an organization viewed through servant leadership, as it was proposed in the 3 Ps, is profit matters, but also how does an organization create a sustainable profit that positively impacts everyone involved? And so there's multiple groups. There's, first off, am I preying upon my customers? Am I increasing my revenue because I can? Or am I doing it because I need to? Because maybe, like, let's say my supply chains went up. And so that conversation is important. Just raising a revenue, raising profits, raising costs, just because you want to make more money, it is not servant leadership. You're seeing this right now, actually, nationally. A lot of corporations are raising their costs, raising their prices. At the same time, they're actually saying, oh my God, look at the record-breaking profits that we have. So they're saying to customers, like, I'm so sorry, costs have gone up. We have to raise the price. I'm so sorry. Your burrito is going to be a little bit more money right now. And at the same time, they're going to their investors and stockholders and being like, listen, y'all, we're getting rich. So that does not positively impact everyone involved, from the customer to the employee, maybe just only the stockholders. And so profit, it matters. How you make it sustainable and something that benefits everyone. There's I follow him, and he's been in the news actually quite a lot lately. I forget his company, if anybody recognizes the name. His name is Dan Price, and he is a CEO of a credit processing, credit card, something money company, transfers, digital something. Dan Price. Somebody can Google that and put in the chat. I'd appreciate it, or if you know. Dan Price is a servant leader, and his company, he actually has built around servant leadership. Many years ago, he was talking to an employee and found out that employees were they live in, I think, the Portland area or the Seattle area, and the cost of living is very high. And he found out that his employees, several of his employees, or one of his employees, was having to go get food stamps to be able to pay to get food. And his thought process was like, oh my God, what's going on? The company's doing great. I'm rich. Gravity payments. Yes, that's exactly it. And he was like, I'm rich. Like, we're doing great. We're making so much money. But my employees, they don't have enough money to survive. Cost of living has increased so much. And so what he did was he said, you know what? This is unacceptable, because my livelihood depends on the well-being of my employees. If my employees are not paid well, they're going to leave me. They're going to be unhappy. They're going to do subpar work. And his vision was to grow the company. And so he said, I'm going to cut my salary. Over 70,000, I really don't need it. And I'm going to cut my salary so much that every employee makes a minimum starting salary of $70,000. This is also like 10, 15 years ago, so probably it's gone up since then. And let me tell you, he did this, and the company has just exploded because people love it. People see his company as a servant leadership organization. They want to work with the company. People want to work with him. People want to stay. In fact, his employees pulled together the resources and bought him a Tesla. So here we see Dan Price saying, I need the 3 Ps of the people, the planet, he got a Tesla, and profit, but all of them being based on social responsibility. So, as we wrap up, we're about 2 minutes left. I hope you've enjoyed servant leadership. I hope you find this to be interesting. It's one of my favorite topics, and hopefully it's something that you're walking away thinking, oh, I love this too. Because to quote Robert Greenleaf, to serve is the greatest honor. And whether you're the CEO of a Fortune 500 company or just a regular person like me, servant leadership is something that you can infuse in your life, in your career, and the way that you see other people. And it's going to make a positive difference. And it's everything from rejecting that power of saying, I don't need more power. I don't need more authority. I'm going to delegate to you. I want to build you up, to even the language that you use. So, for example, when I talk about you all, I don't often say, oh, my students or the students in my program. I often say the students I serve. Or when I describe my role, I say I serve at the University of Maryland, Baltimore. And even that change of language shapes the way that I interact with an organization. And so it's things like that that are easy to apply, that hopefully you can apply as well. And then also being more empathetic and listening to people. Because let me tell you, you all are in graduate and professional programs. You are going to leave here and immediately be leaders. There's no doubt in my mind. You are going to be a leader literally once the second you graduate from here. You're going to get a career and you're going to be leading people, and people are going to look up to you. And so right then and there is your opportunity to say, I'm going to be a servant leader. And I really hope you do. If you have any questions, again, my name is Greg Brightbill. You all know me. Feel free to shoot me an email. I'm always happy to talk to you about servant leadership. And thank you for attending.